It is common cause that the complainants massage his feet according to the complaints. It is generally during those appointments where it is alleged that he sexually assaulted them or raped them. It is in judgment, paragraph 8. So, Chairperson, why would a religious leader repeatedly call young girls into his private quarters for this task? The court failed to confront this question, creating a judicial blind spot. Observation number 3, Chairperson, the court did not explain why 11 complainants would fabricate similar allegations. The judge failed to provide any rationale for why so many women, unrelated and from different contexts, would concoct coordinated lies. While not in a single paragraph, the judgment offers no analysis of this obvious question. Your body parts will be scattered all over, and dogs will drink your blood in the street. That is in the judgment, paragraph 20. So, Chairperson, in our analysis and our observations, this threat shows spiritual and psychological domination, not fabrication. The absence of motive for 11 people to lie should have raised judicial concern. So we go to observation 4, Chairperson. The judge ignored relevant legal precedents. The judgment does not reference the Supreme Court of Appeals ruling in the State versus Mafalajiso 2005, despite clear contradiction between complainants' earlier statement and court testimony. The legal precedent was never cited or applied in this judgment, yet it provides the proper method for handling inconsistencies, a central issue in this case. Chair, in terms of observation 5, the court used the prosecution incompetence as an excuse to disregard evidence. The judgment most critical turning point lies in paragraph 59. The primary factor was the lack of cross-examination by the state prosecutor. This shows that the court leaned too heavily on prosecutorial failure rather than using its own powers under Section 186 of the Criminal Procedure Act, which empowers judges to call additional evidence where justice requires it. The function of the court, Chairperson, is not that of being a neutral umpire. You must try to assist the court. So, in that regard, I've got a question to the NPA. Did the NPA raise concern with the judge about invoking Section 186 to call necessary witnesses? Did the NPA consider applying for the court to step in where the trial was obviously going, when the trial was obviously going, of course? Did the NPA, under the leadership of Shamila Batoyi, advocate, try to intervene in that regard? We must not be told when things have collapsed and they see now that they are in trouble, they come here and say that we are intervening, when everything has actually collapsed. Chairperson, another observation is the issue, that one I think I've already touched on it, of Advocate Ndela, who was grossly incompetent and very dishonest in that regard. That shows the failure of NPA in such a very high-profile case in South Africa, where the justice system was supposed to prove itself that it is capable in handling matters such as these ones. This investigation started in August 2024 as per the presentation. And there's a view that the expanded team will finalize the investigation by mid-June 2025. So, Chair, the NPA began investigating only after the case have collapsed, actually. confirming institutional delay and negligence. Chair, another observation in this matter that we want to also raise is the issue of the NPA may be undercapacitated in handling rape cases. With over 40,000 rape cases reported annually in South Africa, many require specialized prosecution, something clearly lacking, I think, in this case. So what plans exist to capacitate, train, and deploy prosecutors equipped to handle GBV-related matters with the sensitivity and professionalism they may demand?